uh, Jim Nations and Clarissa saw my exhibit at NAPEX and invited me to give a little talk about the postcards. So here I am. What I tried to do in my exhibit and here tonight is to show the various ways that dogs served in World War One, as illustrated through the postcards. At least 53,000 dogs served in the militaries of all the countries, uh, and countless more were involved uh, in war efforts by civilians. Dogs were used in the battlefields and in bombed out villages and cities to find the dead and the wounded. They were trained to distinguish between those who were already dead and those who could be rescued. They provided aid and comfort to the wounded and dying. They served guard duty and alerted troops to impending attacks. They transported machine guns, food, and supplies, and they provided companionship as pets and mascots for common soldiers, as well as for officers, seamen, and wartime leaders. They helped in recruitment, raised funds for war efforts, and boosted morale at the front and at home. Postcards of World War One also showed using dogs, also poked fun at the enemy, promoted patriotism, and raised morale. This is one of the more recent postcards that I found, which I was delighted to find because it shows uh, this Major Richardson, who was the first British person to start promoting the use of dogs in World War One. The story is that in 1895, he came across a man buying a sheepdog from a shepherd and learned that the man was a German and had been sent over by his government to purchase a large quantity of collie dogs for the German army. He was told that these dogs were found to be excellent for the work required and that they had nothing like it in Germany. So Richardson started experimenting with the use of dogs for the military. And then in 1914, he and his wife opened the British War Dog School, where they trained what they called mercy dogs for the British Army. And you'll see there are a variety of names for these, what they call these dogs. They call them mercy dogs, sanitary dogs, Red Cross dogs, search and rescue dogs, uh, all uh, referred to their usage. Here's a German medical dog and his handler in training, and it's a German postcard. It's unposted. As I mentioned, the Germans had started using dogs in the military before the British. Back in 1890, and a man named Jean Bergartz founded the German Association for Medical Dogs, and he's the one who envisioned training dogs who could help find wounded soldiers. What I've done here is I've color coded my slides so that all these ones with the blue background are showing dogs in training. And here we have German dogs resting during training. Here's another one where the dogs are in the trenches uh, and they're being with their trainers. This is a French postcard. Here we have an Austrian postcard, Austria, Hungary. Uh, these dogs are actually being reviewed by the Austrian Archduke and Duchess, kind of like a inspection. Here I have, it's kind of a cartoon, um, and it's showing two Red Cross military dogs, and they're saying in German that this dog is unworthy for frontline service. This one is a kind of it's obviously a painting rather than a photograph. And it shows a chocolate Labrador with stretcher bearers. There's the stretcher bearer, although it only shows one, which I don't know why they didn't show two people. Um, and there's a medic or a doctor with a wounded soldier and the dog. And I don't know what this guy is doing, but I guess he's supposed to be in a trench. This is now we're showing dogs in actual battlefield conditions. And here you have two dogs uh, with a medical unit at a field hospital. This, okay, this is the first two postcards of a series of 10. I was able to accumulate all 10 in the series. They're German postcards, and they show rescue dogs in various uh, paintings of their field service. I'm not going to show you all 10, but here's a general view of the first three of them, uh, tracking down wounded soldiers and being with medics. Germans also made heroes of some of their dogs that were rescue dogs. This one is the medical dog named Troll. He's in his field march equipment with his handler. And then here he's staged by a railroad track supporting a rescued wounded soldier. And here's another dog named Ago or Ago, who's shown saving a wounded man who was freezing in the snow. And this, I can't tell whether it's the same dog or not. It's probably not. But it shows a dog pulling a wounded soldier on his handler's skis in the snow. This one, you postcard collectors are probably going to be critical of or uh, would reject this one because it's kind of banged up and somebody has written across the front of it. But what I realized when I looked closer, it's autographed by the dog's handler, who is an adjutant in the French army. And he's mailed this card, which is a real photo postcard, uh, to it looks like a former neighbor or friend, giving them his regards. And the dog's wearing a Red Cross blanket, which is in English, but he's obviously in the French army. Here I'm showing some Austro-Hungarian search and rescue dogs. Doberman here uh, uh, with a wounded soldier. It was produced by the Welfare Fund for Women and Children. And this one is also by them, and the handler is telling the dog to go search for the wounded. There's another Austrian one showing a dog answering the cry for help, also by the Austro-Hungarian Welfare Fund for Women and Children. And here's a German Shepherd finding a wounded soldier. And this is for the benefit of the Cold Protection Aid Station, which I assume is where this dog allegedly would be stationed, in some sort of aid station in the mountains. This is an Italian Red Cross postcard showing search dogs, or dogs searching in the forest. And here's another Austro-Hungarian one with a field post cancel on the back in 1917. Here's a dog searching for civilians in the village. It's a German welfare postcard for the benefit of wounded soldiers and sailors. And this was mailed with the German field post. And this one is you can't really tell. I have an arrow. There's a dog there with the soldiers at a bombed out church in Upper Alsace. It's a French postcard. And now I'm showing some of dogs guarding the border, doing guard duty. This top one shows these soldiers. They don't look like they're working too hard. Their primary duty before the war, and probably at the start of the war, was to serve as customs officers um, at the border, waiting to intercept smugglers. But they, as the card in the bottom shows, they weren't really very effective in stopping the German army. As this French postcard has a 1914 German army field postmark on the back. So it was obviously uh, that area was in the possession of the German army at the time the postcard was mailed. Here we have another dog doing guard duty in the mountains. It's also an Austrian postcard. It's an Airedale Terrier. And here we have a dog up on the edge of the trench with his handler, who's an officer, also standing up. In World War I, if this was a frontline trench, both the dog and the officer would have been shot almost immediately by snipers. This is a British postcard. It's based on a painting, and again, it shows a staged scene where the dog is helping guard the trenches. As I mentioned in the beginning, the dogs were also used for transportation. The top one shows refugees leaving Belgium in a cart that was pulled by dogs, and it was mailed to Rotterdam, Holland, by a Belgian soldier who may have had a family in Rotterdam, or as refugees. They moved to Rotterdam. And then the bottom card uh, shows dogs pulling a cart again with it looks like the whole family's in it. And they're returning from Holland to their destroyed home back in Belgium. And the cart is pulled by four dogs and has a Belgian military postmark on the back. And here we have dogs moving some supplies. Top one is a French postcard, and they're in the Basque Mountains. And the bottom one shows the St. Bernards pulling some dog sleds with supplies, and that's an Austrian postcard. They were also used to pull machine guns by the Belgians in particular. The top one, well, both cards show the Belgian machine gun crews, and the dogs would pull these carts. The one on the bottom, I thought was interesting that it was sent from a Cleveland men's and boys clothing store, which I assume was used as a kind of an well, it was an advertising postcard. And the topic of interest to men and boys was the ongoing war. And that's an American postcard. What I wanted to point out was prior to the war, Belgian dogs were frequently used to pull milk carts that were very similar to these carts. And you may have seen there are some fairly common postcards showing the Belgian dogs with their milk carts. The Austrians here are using a dog to haul out rocks from some tunneling they're doing in the mountains. World War I was not the first war where dogs were used. This one this postcard shows a dog whose name was Mater, who was a stray and who was adopted by a battalion of British Grenadiers in the Second Boer War, which was 1899 to 1901. And he's wearing his military medals. And this was produced in England, and it was unused. And here's another hero. I assume he's not a stray, but he's in a position of with the honor guard leading the victory parade in Paris in 1919. Now, these are some postcards showing dogs fictitiously, obviously, but each of these dogs is wearing the German Iron Cross, which was a medal for valor. And they're American cards. They're both produced by an artist named Wall, which you may have heard of. He produced a lot of similar cards during World War One. And what I wanted to point out here was that there were actually German dogs who received medals during the war. One dog named Tell received the Iron Cross for alerting German troops of a Russian ambush, and he was given credit for saving the entire unit. This postcard is an allegory. It's a French postcard, and it shows a wounded dog symbolizing Belgium. And although it's an allegory, there were, as estimated, 53,000 military dogs used by both sides in World War One, who were either killed or wounded in action. And there's his wounded paw. Now, this one, I know it's a pigeon, not a dog, but there's a story here. There was a dog named Satan, who was a French messenger dog, and he was a hero of the Battle of Verdun. He was fatally shot while transporting two replacement carrier pigeons on his back to a French unit that had lost communication with the headquarters command. And he managed to crawl the rest of the way to the French trenches. The French then the trenches back at headquarters, and the French then sent more carrier pigeons back, and the soldiers were able to list the coordinates of the German positions, and that allowed the French artillery to then bombard the Germans. And the message on this card is that this is our last carrier pigeon. It was a message from the commander of Fort Vaux at Verdun in the story I just told you. This is a pet or a mascot, I think. He was a Springer Spaniel. He's in the trench with a French officer. The caption on the back says that he's dressed for a poison gas attack, but it looks to me like a medieval kind of armor almost. And what this is, I think, is the propellant or the gas for the poison gas. And then I have a few postcards showing the dogs as adopted as pets, and they're boosting morale at the front. These three dogs are with a crew of a balloon defense cannon unit, which is what they called it, but it's anti-aircraft, we call it today. And it was a German postcard, and it was mailed by field post or Feldpost. And then this one in the bottom is a mascot with German soldiers, and it's a real photo postcard. And it was sent by the 27th Reserve Corps. From pictures of captured officers' shelter that had been built by the French, but these German medics with their dog are sitting in front of it. And here we have a faithful, three faithful friends is the caption, and it's a Saint Bernard with two German officers who are eating lunch in a trench. And this one shows a dog who had been abandoned in a burnt village near Antwerp, and he's been adopted by the British soldiers. And It's a French postcard. It was unmailed. Here we have a spaniel with a French bicycle officer or soldier. I don't know whether he was doing any work as a scout or just a companion for the bicyclist. The bicycle, the bicycle soldier is obviously a scout of some sort. And here we have another mascot with the French artillery unit, and the dog is being held and they're sitting on the tail of the gun. And this one, the dog is sitting in the, I guess you call it a cockpit of a aircraft. Um, it's a Jack Russell, and he's ready for a observation flight. So my question is this a dog an aviator? And the one below it is another Jack Russell, and this one you could say the dog is a prisoner of war, a POW, because he was captured in France by a British officer. And here we have the dogs providing some support for the troops and trying to comfort them, I guess, as all these guys are lined up getting their vaccination on vaccination day at Camp Lee in Virginia. It's an American postcard. And this dog is the center of attention of guys playing cards. The Navy uh, seemed to have more of a friendly policy, a more tolerant policy for sailors keeping pets on board ships. The Army actually had a policy where there was a proclamation that, or an order that soldiers were not to purchase dogs overseas because they didn't want them to conflict with the purchases by the French and British uh, for their dogs. But the Navy didn't have that problem. People adopted dogs um, and kept them on their ships, including the captain of the ship here. I can't tell whether this is an autograph. It has the captain's name and his mascot. Whether he signed it or somebody else signed it, I can't tell for sure. And here we have a bunch of uh, naval sailors, all with their pets. And I think I skipped over this one. This is a couple uh, mascots for given ships. The British ship Legion and the U.S. ship Parker. And even the wartime leaders had their own pets. This one on the left is the Red Baron, Baron von Richthofen, with his Great Dane, who through the wonder of the internet, I was able to find out the dog's name, which was Moritz. And then there's Field Marshal von Hindenburg. Picture was after the war when he was a German president, and his German shepherd, whose name was Rolf. Here we have a picture of nurses with their mascot or pet, and it's a French postcard, and it says the English lady nurses getting their tents ready. And the dog doesn't seem to be helping any. Here's a Labrador retriever at the grave of a comrade, and the point is that it's a faithful friend who's faithful comrade, based on a painting. Now I've got a few wartime cartoons which I always enjoy. Um, this one is making fun of the enemy. It's an Italian postcard issued before Italy was in the war, while it was still trying to maintain its neutrality. And you can see the French poodle is looking scared of a German looks like a bulldog, and then you have other dogs. And this one is supposed to be the Italian dog staying in shelter back in his doghouse. And this was a common theme where making fun of the enemy, a French postcard showing a rescue dog disrespecting the German helmet. And this one is a U.S. one, soldier bringing back some souvenirs. Souvenirs are all symbolic, beer stein, sausages, dachshund. And he says, I'll bring you back some souvenirs. These are Bamford postcards. There are quite a few of these different cartoons. First one shows an allegory of the German Kaiser. Looks like a plucked chicken, and he's been plucked by a French poodle and a British bulldog. And this one I like. It's Prussian infantry. And it shows the dogs and cats as the Kaiser's last line of defense. And this is the crown prince here, and this is the German Kaiser Wilhelm, and the dogs and cats. Another Bamford postcard, British postcard, showing the German Kaiser being bombarded by cannon fire. And these are dogs used as patriotic symbols. And the first one was done in 1916, and it's called the Allies Special Aid Card. What I found interesting is it includes Ireland here, but does not include the United States yet, because we didn't join the war until April 1917. But the second card was issued in 1917, I could tell, because it does include the United States, Cuba, and Romania, which weren't on the first card. And then finally, after the war, we see the top one shows a cemetery, a memorial for a war dog memorial. This is in Hartsdale, New York. It's an unposted card. And the bottom one is not really a postcard, but I couldn't resist putting this in here because it's one of my favorites. And it's not in my collection. This is a copy, but it was sent with a dog on his journey back home from being overseas. And it says, "This is a good dog. He is going on a long journey. Please be kind to him. Give him water, food, and exercise. Someday you will get your reward. He has been over there," which I thought was kind of touching. And that's the end.
Thank you, Jack. This is very, very interesting.
Good.
So please unmute yourself if you have any question for Jack.
So Jack, did you start out collection World War One cards, and this is just the dog part of it? I mean, you have an amazing collection of
Yeah.
dog to World War One. Can you hear me?
Yes, that's
Ah.
exactly what happened.
Yeah.
I've got a bunch of
Huh?
dog cards along the way,
Wait.
and I've put them together to make an exhibit for NAPEX. But I've done exhibits on Belgium in World War One, France in World War One, and nurses in World War One, all with postcards.
And how do you find most of these? Do you go to a lot of shows, but do you search the internet for World War One cards?
Exactly.
Ah.
And I found a dealer in Germany who has a tremendous stock.
Yeah.
I've got a lot from him.
What is your personal collection? No, your personal connection to World War One and your personal connection to dogs. How does that come together?
Well, I had a dog when I was a child, but other than that, it's just the postcard connection. And World War One it just fascinated me when I was a child. Um, I found it was just the horrendous war, and
Mhm.
it just
Mhm.
was so wasteful.
Thank you very, very much. It was terrific. Really good. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Do you feel that you found most of the cards that cover this subject, or is it just an infinite supply and you keep finding new ones and new series?
Well, I don't think I've exhausted the field, but I find them less and less frequently now. So I must be getting near the completion, but I'm frequently surprised. I come across things all the time, so I'm still collecting them, and I imagine there's a lot more out there. I get excited when I find one that's a real photo postcard, and sure that there might be a lot of those around, but I don't see them that often, and they may not have been preserved.
Are these postcards expensive? What are you typically paying for them?
I don't pay a lot. I kind of try to stay within a budget of under $10. I think $20 may be the most I've ever paid for one. They're not too expensive.
People don't know what they have.
Probably not. But I think the postcards are appealing just uh, to dog lovers too.
I've got one. How long have you been collecting these?
About 60 years.
Oh,
I started before I was a teenager. Um, I grew up in the area near Albany, New York, and they had the War Cover Club then, which was um, a subset of the American Philatelic Society, I guess it was. And they used to meet in Albany. And I, being a kid, the people were very generous with sharing postcards and first and post, stamped envelopes and material from World War One.
how many cards do you have now? You've been collecting for 60 years.
That if you could see that shelf, I've got two shelves, all albums of World War One postcards. I've got them sorted out by country and then by topic, so that I have each of the uh, major countries, Austria, Belgium, Great Britain, France, whatever. Then I also have uh, albums with subtopics within that of dogs and nurses and letters, tanks, air war, um, prisoner of war, um, and peace efforts. So I've got quite a few. I don't know how many, but a large volume.
Congratulations. That's terrific.
Well, thank you.
I have a question for Hal,
Yes.
who's out there in Kansas. Do you know offhand if the World War One museum in Kansas City has a display of dog cards?
I know of the museum and I've been there and loved it and enjoyed it. Want to go back. I don't have any connections there. I don't know. Um, I just don't, I don't know
Okay.
anybody there.
Yeah, we were just sitting here discussing that because we went through that museum, but it's so overwhelming.
It
We
is.
we couldn't remember what we saw. And we don't know whether there's any cards in there or not. Quite a display of World War One memorabilia.
Really, it's true. I mean, it's just a lot of material.
So
I have a
now
question.
you have to go to the museum and let us know.
Well, maybe next year when we get to what's that postcard show someplace out there? Wichita or some town like that. There's a
Yeah.
postcard show. Maybe
Right.
maybe we'll stop there again.
That would be fun. That'd be very good. Yeah.
I have a question for Jack. Jack, this is Marva. I have a small collection of embroidered silk postcard from World War I. Do you have any?
I said I have a few, but it's not one of my particular interest. But
Oh,
it was apparently a very popular way at the time for soldiers overseas to send these cards back home. And I've seen a bunch of them, and the French and Belgian uh, civilians, the women would embroider these cards, and they would try to make them as marketable as possible to the soldiers. So you see them for the medical corps, and you see others for different units, artillery and stuff like that, as well as messages to mom and stuff like that. So they
yeah.
were very popular at the time.
I find them to be very beautiful. And I have a small collection. I'll probably send you the video I made of my collection.
Oh, I'd like to see that.
Sure, sure.
If you don't, so I will like to thank Jack for a wonderful presentation and totally unusual topic. I mean, World War I we know, but not, concentrating on these dogs. It's fantastic what Postcard can do.
Right.
Just a little
One
comment.
thing I'd like to add is that the reason I don't have too many postcards showing U.S. Dogs in the military during World War I is that they didn't have a canine corps or anything like it until 1940. For the Second World War, they had dogs in the U.S. military, but nothing during the First World War. They relied on their allies for the dogs.
One comment is you said that one postcard that was written on top and then maybe postcard collector will not appreciate. I think you're wrong. We
Yeah,
will appreciate
much so.
because it has a story behind it as opposed to being just a postcard.
Yes.
I like it.
Jack, have you written this up for the Military Postal History Society?
No, not yet.
I'm sure they would. I'm sure they would publish an article.
Carrie will be on your case now to do that.
Thanks, Carrie.
You're welcome.
I got a quick question.
Sure.
Can you recommend the places to go where we might find those World War I postcards?
I find a lot of them at stamp shows. There are dealers like Bob Toll who often bring postcards and going through the boxes, looking under the military or World War I find them.
And on eBay.
eBay, and then I'm sure
Especially.
at York Post show, which is pretty big, is one of the biggest in this side of town. You probably will find World War I. All right. Well, thank you very much all for attending.